brought up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I was born there and grew up and went to high school. Went to work for DuPont Company in '63. Took basic training in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and then I went to, from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I didn't really volunteer. You know how it is in the military, when they ask for volunteers, nobody wants to volunteer, so they come around and pick you. They were looking for people to go what they called a leadership academy at Fort Polk, and most of the cadre around Fort Polk kind of looked down on the guys. Of course, I didn't know all this when I was picked for it, but they kind of looked down on the guys because actually what the LPC is 2 extra weeks of training, and the idea was to give guys extra training in map reading, compass, weapons, and this sort of thing, to become squad leaders in the training unit. And it was a good experience. You had to stand inspections every morning and go to classes during the day. That was a 2-week course, and it was really quite a learning experience, because basically you just get a little training in different things on compass and knowing how to read a compass and doing that sort of thing, and it was really worthwhile, I thought. But so after that 2 weeks, the deal was, if you went through LPC and you didn't get kicked out or whatever for some reason, then they would place you in a squad leader position in the unit, in the training units. And if you kept that position through the whole training session, then they would make you PFC, because I got E2 out of basic, which was kind of a shock. You know, they didn't hand out a whole lot of E2s out of basic. So that I got sent to the unit and was assigned as a squad leader position, and had a real tough platoon sergeant. I mean, he was an older man, but that really didn't bother me too much, because you expect that from all these guys anyway. So, but I was able to hold on to that squad leader position through the training, and when the training was up, the guys that were going to Fort Hood, Texas, we didn't go to any graduation or anything. We had our stuff packed, and they loaded us on the bus that morning and went to Fort Hood, Texas. And so then when we got to Fort Hood, Texas, there was nobody actually in the unit yet. They were waiting on guys like your dad and Alan, and you know, all the guys that were taking basic training at Fort Hood, Texas, and they were to come over and fill the unit. And of course, most of these guys were like 18, 19 years old. I was kind of like an old man to them. Sergeant Van Horn was our platoon sergeant at the time, and he was a rough, gruff old man, but man, he was tough, and he was a good guy. Everybody liked old Van Horn. There was a sergeant that had done a tour in Nam, along with, of course, Captain Brennan had, Van Horn had, and some of the others had too, I'm sure. But the sergeant was supposed to go back, and they were going to promote him to E7 or whatever, you know, give him rank to go back. So at the last minute, he bugged out. He decided he wasn't going to go back. Van Horn came over into the barracks and came over to my bunk, and he threw E5 sergeant stripes down on the bunk and said, get those on and report to the captain at 1,600 hours or whatever. So I said, okay. So, and I really didn't want a squad leader position. I even told Van Horn, I said, Van Horn, I said, let Gary Stating have it over there. You know, Gary was from California, and Van Horn said, I gave them to you, and he said, you do what I tell you. You know, of course, if you knew Van Horn, you'd know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I went and reported to the captain and everything, and said, you're going to be in a squad leader position, and he went through what he expected out of me and all this. Then after that, well, when we got ready to ship out, of course, we went out to California and got on the ship. I guess it was the USS Upshur, I think. And on our way to Vietnam, stopped in Okinawa, had a night there, and back on the ship. And a lot of the guys hadn't been carried and dragged and everything else to get back on the ship. But that was one good fun night that we had, and then the rest of the time was back on the ship. And we got off on an LST for some reason. I don't remember what it was, and we sat on that LST for the longest, and finally got going into the port there at Chulai. And Westmoreland came up and made a speech to all of us and all that, hooray, hoorah, and all this kind of thing. And then they put us in these barracks on stand down to wait till we got ready to ship out to go down to the unit. And that was interesting to be there, because there was a huge helicopter pad, and one evening when the helicopters come in, it just seemed like hundreds of them coming in there, you know, and landing on that helipad and all. And that was really a sight to see. You know you're in Vietnam, and you don't know what to expect, but I mean, you know that things are going to come to you, and landing there, going in there at the landing there at Chulai, you know, you see all the complex and everything, but you don't see much but this red clay, you know, this dirt and the buildings up, you know, and all that. And you said, man, you know, here I am. This is Vietnam. And you really didn't get to see much of anything there, but on our operations and stuff, you know, we pulled bridge security and different things like that, and we got to pull security on the coast for a unit there. I don't remember if it was an artillery unit or what, but it was beautiful up there. I mean, it was right on the coast. We got to go swimming during the day, and there was one of our units was on bridge security, and they had an LP out at night, and they had one of them big starlight scopes, and we would go down, you know, and look through the starlight scope, and there was a huge village right there where we were at. So it was pretty interesting to look through that scope and be able to see people over in the village moving around and stuff like that. But one night there, the bridge, the unit that was down on bridge security got attacked, and I think that was our first casualty in Vietnam, was on somebody that was down on the bridge security. And I can't remember his name right off. And we could see the helicopter gunship when it came in on support. And what was interesting about that at the time was that supposedly every fifth round is a tracer, and it looked like a steady stream of rev, them miniguns firing out, you know, and that was a sight to see. And of course, you know what's going on. It's not, you know, it's not exciting in that part, but you know, it's just interesting to see that helicopter gunship firing. Well, you know, the heat was bad, but it wasn't really unbearable most of the time, because you got used to it pretty good. And sometimes it would just pour down rain and get you soaking wet, and the sun would come out, and it would be hot, and you could see steam rolling off of everybody, you know, their uniforms or fatigues drying out. And we slept in the rain a lot of times and had ambush patrols out at night, and it poured down rain. I remember one incident, I had my squad out on ambush patrol. We got in the rice paddy, and myself and RTO was leaning back on the rice paddy. They were pretty much dry right there where we were at. The VC jammed the radio frequency, and we had to check in every hour on the radio. The CPRTO come on and said that we were getting jammed. You could, every once in a while, you could hear them talking on the radio, and so they told us to go to another frequency. Well, the thing about that was they said to go to Captain Brennan's age. Well, it never hit me, you know. I said, Captain Brennan's age, and I actually went around to some of the guys. I said, hey, I said, you guys, you know what Captain Brennan's age is? No. We laid out there all night, and it come a rain. I mean, it come pouring down, and right where me and RTO was laying, it was like a little spillway from one rice paddy to the other. That water come running over that spillway thing there, you know, got us wet, and so I had no idea what the captain's age was, you know, to change radio frequency. We laid out there all night long with no communication whatsoever with CP. I couldn't have called in mowers. I couldn't have done anything but haul tail maybe if we run anything. Finally, when daylight came and we made our way back to the CP group, and it never dawned on me or a couple of guys that I asked that the captain always said he was 21, if I remember right, and he wasn't 21, of course, but he just said he was 21. And that never hit me, but that was the frequency, you know, that they was going to, was 21. That was really frightening to me because being out there with no communication, and there 12 or 13 of us, I can't remember exactly how many of us was laying out there, but that was, I mean, it was more frightening to me when it was over, I guess, at the time, because I knew we'd do the best we could, you know, if anything happened. But when something like that happens, you just think of what could have happened, you know, and that just kind of scared me a lot. And being in the position I was in, you know, and being responsible, it really scared me that way. We never really ran into much the time I was there, ambushes and stuff or anything like that, and I took out a few ambush patrols, and we never got hit or anything, you know, and of course I was thankful to God for that, because you don't really never want to experience ambushes or anything, and you really want to try to avoid anything you can avoid and make it through the day, and you know, and just hope nobody gets hurt. Now that's basically the way I look, and I always thought, well, you know, we made it through today, you know, and tomorrow's another day, and you just be thankful that you made it through that one day, and the next day, whatever it brings, you just go the next day.